Hi, I'm Jean Shafiroff, and I'm on a mission. Anyone can be a philanthropist. My television show came from my book, Successful Philanthropy: How to Make a Life by What You Give. Won't you join me? Welcome to Successful Philanthropy. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff. This show is designed to highlight the work of philanthropy and those that are involved. Today with us, Bo Dietl. Bo is an actor, he is a media personality, and he's a former decorated New York City police detective. Let's all welcome Bo Dietl. Bo, it's wonderful to have you with us. And Bo, how did you get from being a New York City private detective to an actor?
Well, it's funny. My life really is it's one of the most interesting, not because it's mine, it's just one of the most interesting lives a person can have. I grew up in a neighborhood, first generation. My mom was from Sicily. My father was German. I grew up in Ozone Park. I grew up with a guy named John Gotti, another guy named Ralphie and Joey Scopo, and we grew up there. And as a kid, all I wanted to be was a gym teacher. My marks were not that good. So I started working as a construction worker. I worked actually on the World Trade Center, the original World Trade Center, as a concrete laborer and then an iron worker. I took the cop test. I didn't want to ever be a cop. Next thing that happens, I'm in the academy, look across the street, somebody's going up the fire escape, and he wasn't a fireman. I chased the guy for about 5 blocks. He had 2 rings, and then I became a police officer. As a police officer, I volunteered to start the first decoy unit out of Randall's Island, citywide anti-crime, where I became a decoy. I was mugged over 500 times, hospitalized 30 times. So I had a pretty fine career. My career spanned about 16 years in total. And some of the biggest cases in New York history, like the rape of a Roman Catholic nun in a convent in 1981, where they carved 27 crosses. The Palm Sunday massacre, 10 dead, 8 children under the age of 12. So what happens is, at the time when I make this big arrest, I'm on the front page of the papers. I had a bodyguard company. I used to bodyguard for the royal family of Saudi Arabia. I was making a couple $100,000 a year extra. People thought I was on the take. I wasn't on the take. I was just doing extra security, and we couldn't moonlight at that time. So I go to California with the Saudis, and then all of a sudden they tell me, "Bo, did you ever jump out of a plane?" We'll make it real quick. I jumped out of a plane, and I didn't take too many lessons. I broke my leg and my ankle in half, and I was forced to retire. Then the greatest thing happened. I meet this guy on 18th Street, I think it was a guy named Nicholas Pileggi, and he's probably one of my closest people in my whole life. And he talked to me about me retiring. He put me on the cover of New York Magazine as New York's top detective leaving the police department. That gave me a lot of notoriety. I flew to California, met with Stallone, Al Pacino, all these actors wanted to get my rights. I met with all the directors, and my life just started catapulting. Everybody wants to be around a winner. And when you're in the limelight, everybody wants to be your friend. When you're out of the limelight, they kick you to the curb. But I was in the limelight for a long time. And then I opened up my private investigating business, which took off. And then all of a sudden, as I said, Nick Pileggi said, "Bo, I got this guy I want you to meet. His name's Martin Scorsese. Can we get you up on your Rayo's table Thursday night? We're going to do a movie called Goodfellas." So I had Martin Scorsese, casting director Ellen Lewis, and we had Ray Liotta, Lorraine Bracco, and we all had dinner. And I'll never forget Martin Scorsese. He looked around Rayo's and he saw the characters at the bar: Petey Nose, Johnny Roast Beef, Mikey Black, all these characters. So Marty said to me, "You think we could come back next week? And anybody who wants to be in Goodfellas, tell them to come up." So we casted 12 people, including the owner, Frankie Pellegrino, in Goodfellas out of Rayo's. That was the first one. Prior to that, I was getting calls for these other parts: Maniac Cop 1, Maniac Cop 2, all these movie roles. And I enjoyed myself. The Curve, a lot of movies. I think I've done over 45 or 50 movies and TV shows.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
now I want to step back a little. You started as a New York City cop, and then you became a decorated police detective
Yes.
within New York City. And from there, you opened up your own security firm and became an actor. I think you first starred in Bad Lieutenant, if I'm correct. That was a movie produced by Ed Pressman, someone I know very well. And in that movie, it was all about the killing of a nun, correct? And that was actually based on something that you were involved with.
Well, that was the original one where you had Harvey Keitel played this lieutenant who was shooting heroin. It wasn't really based on me. I didn't do that. And they wanted to think of the most heinous crime labeled by Ed Koch, Mayor Ed Koch, the most heinous crime in New York history. When they carved the crosses, they beat her up pretty bad, and they left her for dead. So they did the movie, and I played a detective sergeant in it. And it's just funny that they wanted to get the worst story that ever happened in New York, and he portrays this lieutenant. So it was loosely based on my case, but I play the actual, an actual detective sergeant. But then the actual movie came out, One Tough Cop, with Stephen Baldwin and Gina Gershon, and also Sean Penn's brother. What was his name? He passed away. He was in the movie also. And it was just funny that this movie, when we started to talk about it, and I read the script, I says, I can't do this movie. They had me killing like 40 people. I says, no, the real story about Bo Dietl, One Tough Cop, I never killed nobody. I'm the one that's been hospitalized 30 times. The real character was being able to go out there and not kill people. And I mean, the dead man tells no tales. Let me just leave it at that. So we finally did the movie. I sat with this guy, Mark Wahlberg, for about 6 months. We hung out. He was supposed to play me. Marty Bregman fires him the last minute. And then Marty says, Bo, you got to pick between Stephen Baldwin and Matt Dillon. And I run into Stallone at the Four Seasons. I say, Sly, who should I pick to play me? I was, well, Matt Dillon, he's been around a lot. The other guy's like a virgin. I go with Stephen Baldwin.
You start as yourself in The Wolf of Wall Street.
I get another call from Mr. Scorsese, who I think is the greatest director of all times. And Marty says to me, I'm reading this book, Wolf of Wall Street, Bo Dietl this, Bo Dietl that. He goes, well, listen, there's a partner for Bo Dietl. Who do you think we should get to play? I said, Marty, I'm playing myself. He goes, of course you are, Bo. And I was able to get that part. And that's when I worked with this guy that became a really pretty good friend of mine, who I speak to all the time. We text back and forth, Leonardo DiCaprio, who happens to be a wonderful young man. And we just had dinner, like I said, before the pandemic with Hank Aaron. I brought him up to Rayo's, and I've had the original table at Rayo's. Frankie gave it to me, Pellegrino, in 1977. So I used to think people liked me. I wasn't liking me. It was like getting up to my table. We've had everyone from Warren Buffett, who never picked up the check. 6 times he's been up there. Bill Gates, Eric Schmidt. I've had everyone here. You had the head of General Electric passed away. Jack Welch, my friend. Actors. Denzel Washington. I produced a movie called The Bone Collector with Denzel Washington, Angelina Jolie. Everybody's up to Rayo's with Bo, and it became a great networking place for business and everything else. I was partners with Steve Witkoff, Bill State. We bought the Woolworth building there, the Daily News building. It's a magical place that everything happens when you're at Rayo's. You want to make a deal? Come up to my Rayo's table. You'll make a deal.
And Bo, this show is about philanthropy. So I understand that you've auctioned off many reservations to eat at Rayo's. And what kind of money would you bring in? I heard that you actually brought in once a huge number just for a reservation at Rayo's. And for our audience, Rayo's is a restaurant in Harlem. Not too many tables. If you've never heard of it, it's quite the place to go. It is a place where it's really a power restaurant for celebrities, people in government, all sorts of types go up to Rayo's. I've never been there. Tried to get in. It's impossible to get in, but I want to hear how you've auctioned off at different charity events, a table reservation there, and what's the max number you ever brought in?
So basically, I have the table. I have the largest table there right in the front. It's 8 people there. and the other tables are smaller around there. They don't have the capacity. So everyone knew I had this table for a long time. So people from charities used to call me up and say, Bo, can we auction your table off? Now, auction a table means the money goes to the auction, but you still got to come there. You still got to pay for your dinner and tips and all that. So I start the auctions most of the time at $15,000. And a lot of times I do the auction and so many things with blood disorders. We raised $1.5 million for CRT, the cancer research treatment thing. And I auction tables off. So when I get 3 people bidding on it, a lot of times it'll go up to 40, 45,000. And what I'll do is I'll say, you got a table, you got a table, you got a table, and raise in one little sweep of a hand $120,000. And that goes to the charity. And over the last, 35 years at least, I've been auctioning that table, raising millions and millions of dollars for really good, fine charities. So, I can't go up there every Thursday night. So I give up a couple of the tables for charities, and it's something that I feel good about doing.
And I think it's wonderful. And for our audience, we are with Bo Dietl. He is a former New York City decorated detective, a media personality, and an actor. And he's talking about his philanthropy and how he's auctioned off his table at Rayo's restaurant in Harlem to actually raise millions of dollars for charity. And for some of our viewers, you might think, why would I spend so much money for a reservation? Well, Rayo's is very hot. Also, people want to donate to a charity. And so they do 2 things. They give a donation and then they get a reservation at one of the hottest restaurants in the world. Now, Bo, you also are known for having a private detective company. Can you tell us, I don't know if you can, but some of the people that you've actually spied on or some of the things you've done?
Well, I started the company. I didn't really start it. It started me when the phone started ringing when I retired, when Nick put me on the cover of New York Magazine there as a feature story. And then I started the private investigating and security. And we've been doing that for the last 37 years at Bo Dietl Associates. We also own the domain investigations.com, that's investigations with an S. And what we do is we do major investigations. We do backgrounds, corporate due diligence, mergers, acquisitions, every type of security. We do assessments for wealthy families to do security assessments. We then investigate if you're investing into corporations, the people on the board. We do every aspect, big pharma, the carpenters union, every type of corporation has hired us. Coca-Cola, every company has hired us to do investigations, but also the security side. And we have a security division. We're in Miami, we're in New York, and these are things that we do as far as security assessments, again, for corporations, for individuals, but also confidential investigations. And I always tell people, you're going to invest money into some, spend a couple of dollars, know what you're investing in, and maybe you won't lose your money. It takes a couple of bucks to find out who you're getting in bed with. And I tell, look, you're going to find things out that maybe are going to deter you from going into business with them.
And that's smart advice. And speaking of security, what do you think of the crime situation in New York City and then in our country right now? And what are your thoughts on no bail?
Well, look, I'm a big, strong proponent of bail reform. I can't see a kid getting locked up for marijuana being put in Rikers Island. You can't make $500 bail. I can't see a kid getting locked up for shoplifting and going to Rikers and no bail. But there has to be a line drawn when you have violent felons like we have walking around New York with no bail. The last 1,000 gun arrests in New York, nobody's in jail. You have robberies happening day and night. Everyone wants to defund the police. I guarantee you could make a survey of our minority communities. They want more police. They are the victims. victims. They're the victims every day of the shootings and the robberies are the people in the minority community. If anything, we need more police presence, and we also have to take and back away from what they're doing to the police. After 9/11, we honored them. Now they're being spat upon. It's horrible what's going on. You have a couple of bad apples in the police department, you root them out. People don't realize there are hundreds of millions of interactions every year. And the ones on these cell phone cameras that are highlighted by the news media, that's all you see. You don't see anything else. You don't see the fact that this year already, over 100 cops have been killed in the United States to date. Over 100 cops. Last week there were 5 killed. No one highlights that. The news media don't highlight it. All they do is highlight one of these videos when you see a cop possibly doing something wrong. I just moved my offices from Penn Plaza to Fifth Avenue. And Penn Plaza, if anybody in New York wants to go and see it, it looks like a toilet bowl. Shooting, we had 2 murders on the corner. New York City will not come back unless we reform bail reform.
Well, what I'm hearing and what I'm hearing from you is that we need to correct the bail reform, make some changes. And then also regarding crime, well, we have to reduce crime. It's all a question of how, I think. And I think when you speak about the police department, 95% of the police are good people, maybe 99%. Like any other group, there are a couple of rotten lemons in every group. And when someone commits a crime, they have to be prosecuted and then brought to trial. So, and I agree with these smaller bail situations where if someone is involved in a very, very petty crime, they shouldn't have to go off to Rikers Island for months and months, because when they get to a place like Rikers Island, they're a young person especially is thrown in maybe with hardened criminals, and they get worse. So we don't want that happening. Bo, I understand you're involved with quite a few charities, but do you have a favorite charity?
Well, one of my favorites is the Tunnels to Toward, and that's a charity after 9/11 put together. And then also the March of Dimes is one that's very special with me. A lot of people don't know March of Dimes, those little babies, 50% of my minority children that are affected by this, and also St. Jude. So I think they're my 3 main ones. Also, whenever a cop gets killed, I try to personally give checks to their family, like what happened, that horrific cop killing on Long Island Expressway, and make sure that I try to get money to their families too.
And I think that's wonderful. We really need to think about those who have less than ourselves, and people where they're in an unfortunate situation, a child with cancer, a child with a physical disability, and then the families of our police officers, because once a police officer is no longer able to work in the force or has been killed, it's very tough on the family, to say the least. And I can't imagine being in that situation. And of course, Bo, getting back to you, I understand you made a run for mayor of New York a number of years ago. What was that like?
Well, it was great when I started. I met with Steve Cohen from SAC Capital at the time, Ken Langone from Home Depot. And they said, Bo, you'll never win as a Republican in New York. So I changed my party line to Democrat. And there was a thing where you check the boxes. I checked Democrat, Independent. And then Mayor de Blasio there made sure that I did not go on any line. He had his general counsel, 2 other lawyers in my Supreme Court, my Court of Appeals, and my appellate court. And I learned one thing about politics. It's very dirty. And I learned something else, that in New York City, the Democratic Party controls who, what, where, and who they want in. They refused to give me a line. I couldn't even run as a Republican. They told me you're not going to have any line, but I didn't quit. I kept running. And the scariest thing to Bill de Blasio was when he had to debate me, and he had to, because I raised $1.5 million, and he used to run off the stage. The man's 6'7", 6'8". He's like a little scaredy cat. He didn't want to face the truth when I called him a criminal to his face, and I put handcuffs up, and I said, you know, Mr. Mayor, You what you pay for play will get it one day, and you will get it. And make a long story short, all I wanted to be was the mayor of all the people in New York. I wanted to help people like I did as a cop and detective. And I really, truly believe that I could have made a change, especially with the education of our children, especially with the crime problems on the street. I was a servant to the Black and Hispanic communities when I was a cop and a detective. So no one can tell me about, I don't know what's going on in the community, especially when you have these child protection services where children are not being dealt with. Let's face it, we have a budget now splitting almost $100 billion just for New York City. There's so much waste. If people would do 10% of their jobs they're supposed to do, you don't have to spend so much damn money. There's so much work, stuff that's assigned to people. They're not doing it. They drive around. You ask people in the city, state, or federal government, what's your job description? It's a big joke, because that's the problem. People who work for government don't do the work as effectively as people in the private sector. That's one thing I've learned.
Well, we're hearing a lot of interesting opinions, and I say in government we have very good people, and like in any other group, there are people that don't work very hard, and that's a problem for corporations, for charities, for government, for all groups. Now, Bo, I understand you're in the middle of filming a new movie, but I want to say to our audience that to me, racial justice is very important. And I think that right now, New York City and our world, we've had a very tough situation with the COVID-19 pandemic, and then the crime situation in the United States, which I believe moving forward, we're going to tackle these problems, meaning we're going to work on everything so that our country does become a safer place and a place where racial justice reigns. I want to hear about your latest movie, and then from there, we're going to wrap this up.
I did two in a row. I've been filming the Godfather of Harlem with what's his name there, Forrest Whitaker and Chaz Palminteri, and it's a little bit of a gangster movie from Harlem, and when he was a big drug lord at the time, Bumpy Johnson. And then I'm doing this other, not an expensive movie, but it's a fun movie called Gravesend, and it's filmed in 1980s Brooklyn, and it's a gangster movie. But matter of fact, I had to fly down to Miami, film last week. I had to whack somebody. It was fun. Yeah.
So
not really whack somebody. I mean, the part called for me to shoot the guy in the head.
Right. So this is all acting that you're
Well,
talking
we hope.
about.
Well,
Yeah.
we don't shoot nobody in the head. This is all acting. Yes. Gene.
Okay. Just to clarify that always. Now, we have a lot of very, very young people who watch this show. What advice would you give to a young person who maybe wants to go into law enforcement?
Well, I'll be very, very honest. I'm sorry to say I wouldn't advise them to go into the New York City Police Department. Find someplace else, because the officers in the New York City Police Department are not appreciated. And if you want to do your job, you're not going to be able to do your job with all the restraints. Until they change that policy, I do not recommend anybody going to law enforcement. What I do is recommend these young fellas go into the military service, learn respect, honor, and learn about loving your country. And it's not a bad place to go into the service and learn that respect, instead of getting everything that I've done with my children. Get stuff for free, get stuff for free. Work hard, because when you work hard, you appreciate what you have and what you get. And remember one thing, you could do anything you want to do. If you want to be the president, you just keep working hard. Don't ever give up. And the harder you work, the better you're going to be off in life, because you'll appreciate what you get when you work hard. Everybody's getting stuff for free now. It's so ridiculous. No one has to work for it anymore. They just get. That's not a good environment for the young kids out there, knowing that they're going to get stuff for free. We got to work hard. We got to change our direction of getting stuff for free and working hard. And again, success is a great thing in our country. And again, hard work equals success.
And I think that's good advice. And I say to everyone watching this show, believe in yourself, get involved in philanthropic efforts. Anyone can be a philanthropist. You can give your time, your knowledge, and you can give small checks. And if you're struggling right now, sometimes when you reach out to others by being kind and by sharing, you'll feel better about yourself. And so, Bo, thank you very much for joining us. I like your advice about hard work. To our audience, I like hard work, belief in yourself, and then try to get a good education or learn a trade that will help you in your future. This concludes Successful Philanthropy. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff, and I'll see you next week.